everyone, my name is Sarah Griffiths and I'm a children's author, and I would love to share with you today my story, George and Maude. I hope you enjoy it. Once upon a time, there was a chirpy old lady with hair tied back as dark as gravy. A nosy neighbour she would always stare while sitting in her comfy chair. Her name was Maude. She liked to eat chocolates, cakes and sweets and treats. And as you can see, Maude is a little bit messy and her front room is covered in chocolates and makeup. Oh, and it looks like parrot food as well. Lots of sweets and lollipops. Her clever old bird kept watch from midnight until noon, throughout the day and by the light of the moon. And there's George looking in the daytime. He watches over the street from the window, and at night time he watches over with one eye closed and one eye open. Here's George. He has the most amazing eyelashes also. His name was George, age 44, a tropical parrot called a macaw. Maude doted on her handsome bird. To normal folk it seemed absurd. Her daughter Jess would wash the floor, change the beds and do all the chores. Maude would sit and chat to George. She fed him nuts for him to gorge. So Maude absolutely adores her parrot, her pet parrot. And look how much love they have for each other here. She loves nothing more than spending time with him. Now Maude was more concerned about the way she looked and loved to pout. She loved to try the latest looks and read about them in her books. George really was a clever bird. He loved to copy every word. He could even mimic a person's voice. The postman was his favourite choice. A large package for you, Maude, addressed to the one and only Mrs. Ford. I need your signature, please. George really was such a tease. Oh, you truly are a cheeky boy. George filled Maude's heart with love and joy. And as you can see, there's George and there's Maude, and she's looking in the mirror, and he's even saying to her, "Who's a pretty girl there?" Maude would try the latest shade of mulberry shimmer and crimson glaze. She would pout at George and hear him speak. "Squawk, give us a kiss on my cheek." "Oh, George, come here," Maude would shriek. She picked him up and kissed his beak. Her daughter Jess had not a clue what this bird was going to do. "Squawk, who's a pretty boy then?" George would ask, whilst Maude put on her beauty mask. Then they would share some silly jokes, really not funny to us normal folks. "Squawk, what is orange and sounds like a parrot?" "Oh, I know this one, George, it's a carrot!" Oh! Jess would sit and shake her head. She shut the door and went to bed. When everyone was fast asleep, that very night, there was a creak. The back door began to open. Goodness gracious, the lock was broken. My goodness, somebody's in the house. Looks like a burglar. Now George was tucked up for the night, but this disturbance made him shoot upright. His cage was covered with a feathery shawl, and George tucked himself into a ball. There was a gap where George could see. Who on earth could this be? Suddenly a wide shadow came into view. A short round man was dressed in blue. So he could see him through the little peak in his shawl. Oh, my goodness. He wore a black mask as a disguise with cut-out holes revealing his eyes. In his hand he carried a sack, which he threw precariously onto his back. With great surprise, the shawl was lifted, and into the cage the big man sifted. George began to squawk and panic. The whole affair became quite manic. Squawk, 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 squawk. All that noise, I wonder if it will wake Maude up. Then the burglar said out loud, "You silly bird, don't make a sound." He yanked and heaved and pulled out feathers. "Now don't you dare try anything clever." And he said, "Shh." He doesn't want anyone to be woken up in the house. I think with all that noise that they would. George flew around. He knocked Maude's makeup on the ground. Mulberry gloss and crimson glaze, coral blush and sunset blaze. "Stop that now, you wicked bird." The burglar, he meant every word. Now George was really quite aghast. "Squawk! Maude's in trouble! Squawk! I must think fast!" So he's got an idea. I think he's going to help Maude. I wonder what he's going to do. George could copy any sound of choice, from a doorbell ringing to a person's voice. Down the road lived Constable Bill, and George would watch from the windowsill. He'd listen as he read the morning news, then fly back to his cage for a snooze. Only last week he'd heard Bill enforce the law to the man that only lived next door. So he can sound just like Constable Bill, and he can sound like a doorbell. He's a very clever bird, isn't he? He read him his rights and cuffed his hands, then he escorted him forcefully to the police van. George had memorised what he had heard, and now he repeated every word. Oh, he's so clever. Very clever bird. His voice was stern. He meant business. He flew out of sight swiftly with incredible quickness. So he's hiding in the shadows. He's pretending to be Constable Bill. "Stop right there, you are under arrest." George was firm and puffed out his chest. So burglar's like, who is that? He thinks it's a real policeman. "You do not have to say anything," the parrot mimicked on. "However it may harm your defence." George was nearly done. The burglar looked around to see. Who on earth could this be? And there he is, in the shadows, and the burglar's like, "Oh, I think I better get out of here." George realised all was not well. So, ding dong, he mimicked the front doorbell. The sound echoed round the room, then all that was heard was a thump and a boom. Maude had fallen out of bed. Startled by the doorbell, she banged her head. Poor Maude, look, she's really hurt herself. But at least it's woken her up. Jess had woken and called the police. "You won't get away with this." Then George released birdseed pellets at the burglar's face. The door flung open and the police gave chase. The burglar ran towards the back door. But Maude's makeup was all over the floor. Face creams, powders, lipstick too, many colours from red to blue. He slipped and tripped and made a leap, flying forward into a heap. So it's good reason for that makeup to be on the ground. Finally, the burglar was taken to jail. George was delighted, but Maude looked pale. They sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea. "Oh, well done, George," said Maude with glee. She's very proud of her bird. And there's Jess making sure that everything's all right. She's still doing the washing up and cleaning, isn't she? I think she likes her cleaning. A clever old bird had saved the day. Now Maude and George could relax and stay. From now on, Maude took George into her room to keep watch on the street by the light of the moon. I think that's where he's at his happiest, because he loves Maude so much. He wants to be close to her all the time, and now he gets to be in her room and look and take care of her from her bedroom window. So I hope you've enjoyed that story, children. And this was my second story that I had published, and I would love if my stories have inspired you to do some writing and to write your very own stories. So I hope you will join me again soon for some more of my stories. Thank you. Goodbye.